Hey, this is Pradeep with Sensual, and today I'm sharing my thoughts on the re-release of Absolue pour le Soir and the scent itself from Maison Francis Kurkdjian. This is a 2024 release of the original from 2010, composed by Francis Kurkdjian himself, of course. In fact, it says so on the back of the label. Perfume created in 2010, signed by Francis Kurkdjian. Comes in the usual 70 ml bottle presentation. Only now the cap is golden and polished instead of the rustic silver of the earlier version. Plus, there's a sticker on the front now instead of the print on the glass directly. Now, for those who are new to the channel, I have a mixed stance on MFK as a brand. I have liked quite a few of their earlier creations: Épaume, Ciel de Gaume, Masculin Pluriel, Lumière Noire, and of course the original Absolue pour le Soir. I even have some admiration for Rouge, for how technically sound it is, really capturing the idea of a red Baccarat crystal being heavy and luminous at the same time. It was also exciting to see one of the perfumer-headed brands in recent times doing really well. However, the later releases from the brand, like the Aqua and Cologne lines, didn't do much for me. They weren't particularly exciting. Some were fine, but they just kept repeating the same fresh laundry mask type of scent profiles. Then they also launched super expensive extrait de parfum versions of their sweet oud fragrances and such after being acquired by LVMH. There seems to be a tipping point when the direction of the brand changed to what it is today. Some years ago, Francis had talked about how he was really interested in becoming an in-house perfumer at one of the big legacy brands like Guerlain, Hermès or Chanel, but those positions never came to him. Maybe that's what motivated him to start his own brand. But even then, I guess he was particularly disillusioned by the business performance of some of the earlier releases from the brand. Maybe his artistic approach also changed to making more and more easily approachable smells. Of course, it seems to have paid off. It is now one of the biggest luxury brands with the support of LVMH. As a result, his own name has also grown, and his new releases always come with expectations. As with other big celebrities and artists who go through a similar metamorphosis, it seems like now he is very limited by certain boundaries and just cannot take risks anymore. In the meantime, he has also taken the role of perfume creative director at Dior after the departure of François Demachy. The drawbacks are only more obvious with his creations there. I have not been taken with even a single creation, have not purchased any bottles so far under his direction. He has also been re-releasing and redoing a lot of their fragrances rather than coming up with something original. Even after 4 years now, he has since extended this trend to his own brand as well. Which brings us to this. Francis made two colognes, Pour le Matin and Pour le Soir, in 2009. Then in 2010, he also made concentrated versions of those two, with Absolue pour le Matin and Pour le Soir. I have to say I quite like the day and night pairing that they do. The later Absolue was this amped up version of the lighter honeyed benzoin rose cologne composition. Apparently, it did not do well business wise. I myself really loved it, had a stack of samples, but for some reason I never ended up with a bottle. At that time, I was probably stingy about the retail price, maybe the bottle being 70 ml, the lack of versatility, maybe even distracted by other releases, or just did not think a well-known brand would stop producing a fragrance just like that. I don't fully remember, but I have since regretted not picking up a bottle, especially when it was readily available. But then with this one, the prices doubled and tripled overnight. That brings us to 2024. As some of you are aware, MFK then starts re-releasing some of their discontinued compositions at a higher price tag with some attached exclusivity. Maybe they thought now there's a bigger audience for these kinds of creations. Indeed, the public has been going for big, bold compositions after the oud craze, niche and indie uprising and such. The brand itself is in a better position to do some targeted marketing and so forth. The first of these was a reinterpretation of Ciel de Gaume called Reflet d'Ambre, which was exclusive to Harrods. Then the two Absolue fragrances were launched and remained exclusive to self-fridges. Meanwhile, they also merged two Apom fragrances as one. Finally, just last week, they relaunched Le Beau Parfum. There are even rumors of Lumière Noire coming back. 4 of these have been consolidated under a separate collection called My Very Intimate Perfumes. I got this in March from Printemps Paris, as I have a loyalty account there. I've already put a dent on it, as you can see. Think it was exclusive to their Paris boutiques for some time. Now it seems to be available online. Need to wait and see how the distribution is going to be this time. Nonetheless, coming to the smell itself, this is an amber oriental creation. Of course, after its discontinuation, they also released Grand Soir paired with Petit Matin, which is very popular till now. This starts off with a prominent note of honey, backed up by benzoin and a good dose of rose. It is quite rich, syrupy and warm, not overly sweet. In fact, the overall smell itself does not go overboard with the sweetness, in spite of the honey, vanilla, sweet florals and benzoin. Grand Soir is sweeter than this. With the honey, the styrax benzoin starts to come in. It has become a favorite resin of mine because of how comforting it can be. It tends to have this golden, fuzzy, balsamic warmth, which I love in the likes of Bonjour Bohème from Diptyque, Bois d'Harmonie from Guerlain. It tends to be sweet, vanillic, powdery, creamy, and enveloping, which is how it is done here as well. There are some spicy facets coming in from the cumin. Some have said it gets animalic and difficult for them. I feel the same way in a lot of other compositions, but here it seems to add just the right amount of spiciness, which is within my threshold. It is a little toned down here in comparison to the original, but I never found even that to be particularly tough to wear. I seem to be getting some herbal nuances too. Maybe there's a hint of lavender, which again makes me think of Grand Soir. The amber elements already start to come through. The rose here seems to be an aromatic, musky rose, which sort of blends with the honey, almost like it's infused in it. Even their website claims it's a rose honey accord. It provides this much needed delicacy meets depth sort of contrast to the composition. Of course, it's one of the reasons why it has been historically paired with richer notes like tobacco, incense, leather, wood and such. I'm also getting something noticeably more floral, waxy, fleshy, other than the rose itself in the middle stages. Maybe some ylang and jasmine. The florals on the cumin give some much needed softer dimension and lift to the rich resinous scent profile. We have had our fair share of muddy ambers. I just don't find them interesting. Just one-dimensional throughout. Not sure why some brands do that. The best ambers have always had something to balance the rich and resinous attributes. Maybe a big bergamot like in Emeraude and Shalimar, florals or spices in the case of Ambre Sultan or Andy Towers creations. This works in a similar way. Some soft incense also creeps in after a while. Into the dry down, it still stays resinous thanks to the honey and benzoin. This to me convincingly captures the allure of dusk, especially the golden hour when the lights come on. And this is not a totally modern city with tall urban buildings everywhere, neon lights and such. It is more so the orange, yellow glow of a historical city. The fragrance itself seems to have an old soul underneath the modern outlook. As it dries down, the cistus labdanum comes to the forefront. This is when the majestic, growling, musky amber really comes through. A touch leathery as well. Maybe not as big as the original. The claws have been trimmed a little, but the soul is still there. With that, you have the contrast of the clean and carnal happening. Some soft sandalwood helps to take the edge off. Again, not too much. I'm not a fan of ambers that just turns to a woody smell after a while. Here the amber scent profile is maintained throughout its life. It finally becomes musky, dry, a touch candle waxy and powdery, almost hay-like. Memories of some other ambers like Ambre Précieux, Ambre Sultan, Le Lion and Musc Ravageur cannot be avoided. But yes, that's how it finishes its journey. The honeyed, warm, sensual amber is what makes for most of the actual wearing experience. The performance is good, lasts 8 to 10 hours. Diffusion is soft, overall a notch lower than the original. More for fall, winter, evening occasions of course. Unisex leaning masculine in the traditional sense. Pricing has increased. I think it was 160 euros before. Now it is 235 euros. I think I would rather take that than paying 600, 700 for the previous edition on eBay. Overall, I just love it. I really like the way it wears. Very elegant, upscale and warm. It captures the feeling of attending a soiree just beautifully. Dim glow of candles, marbled walls, red velvet curtains, slinky costumes, probably even an encounter which lasts after the said event. It can even extend beyond the setting and mood to just being a well-done, traditional, amber-oriental scent. Maybe Francis even built in a nod to his Armenian background in the composition. That is why this, maybe along with Ciel de Gaume, are my favorite creations of his, not only for MFK, but in general, easily one of the best ambers out there. Now on the topic of re-releasing itself, this was well received by a smaller group of perfume enthusiasts, but still it had to be taken out of circulation. I mean, if you think of what the perfume ecosystem was like in 2010, it is not that big of a surprise. It was the year when the likes of Bleu de Chanel, Aventus came about and dominated the conversation. But then there were also more creative releases from the designer exclusive side. Around the same time, even on the niche side, there was Memoir Man from Amouage, Portrait of a Lady from Frederic Malle. So I guess it just got lost in the conversation. That's why I'm in two minds about this strategy. Though I'm glad I myself and possibly many others can enjoy this now, I'm just wondering how far are they going to move up with this seasonal nostalgia approach. It's what seems to have taken over the world. Or are they just not capable of creating something this good hereafter? Sure, some nostalgia and comfort is much appreciated in 2025, but eventually I would prefer to see more new creations that are as good as these instead of the latest Kurkdjian, especially with the ever-increasing prices. In some ways, that applies to a lot of brands, including big designers and other niche brands that came up in the 2000s. Will it actually manifest in reality? Only time will tell. I will leave you with something Francis himself had to say.
Being able to offer a little dream from smelling scented soap bubbles to smelling a fine fragrance eau de toilette or eau de parfum. What is important is really what you buy. What you buy is not a bottle. What you buy is a fragrance, basically. It doesn't have to be necessarily expensive. It has to give you joy and it has to open you, I don't know, it has to give you a smile, I would say.